Shalom. First and foremost, giving all praises, honor, glory, respect, and blessings to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rachakwadash. Salutations to the Lord's elect on the four corners of the earth, pushing this truth and sincerity while patiently waiting for Yahweh Shai's return. And double honors to our apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, which have taught us everything we know through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. And I just wanted to show you, brothers, to prove to y'all that we are in a Cold War. Now, I've mentioned how we were in a Cold War earlier this month, even before the whole Russia-Ukraine incident that took place. You know, I spoke about how we were already in a Cold War, and I mean, some people took it with a grain of salt. Some people fanned their hands and was like, nah, that can't be true. But then you obviously had some of them gainsayers out there. Look, man, you're preaching hate. You should be preaching love and, blase, big lips. Your breath stink. You don't know what the hell you talking about. It's like, shut up, dude. Okay. But anyways, this article right here further proves that we are in a Cold War. Okay? And really, the Cold War started with all these sanctions that the United States and Russia were putting on each other. And it got to a point to where it started to get physical. Now we're seeing the physical part of the Cold War play out in Russia. Of course, the United States was launching cyber attacks on Russia. I mean, there's a lot more that was going on during the Cold War a month ago, even 2 months ago. This Cold War has been going on for some time now. Cyber attacks, sanctions, attacks on economies, banks, financial systems, oil, gas. But what we're seeing here is no more. It's just now being mentioned in the news. But these kind of things have been going on now for a long time. So, we've been in a Cold War. This Cold War between the United States and Russia been started. Of course, NATO was also a part of the Cold War as well. NATO was also a part of the Cold War. You don't think NATO had a hand in putting sanctions on Russia as well? But now it's getting to a point to where what we've been hearing about, we're starting to see it on a physical level. And it's all playing out over there in Ukraine. Now, what's happening in Ukraine is not World War III, but it is a build-up to World War III. We know how World War III is going to start, and it's not going to be over Ukraine. The Lord is merely using Ukraine as a puppet to stir up Russia against the United States and NATO. So here, the title of this article says, "Let's pray the Cold War between America and Russia doesn't turn hot." The Cold War, a term coined 75 years ago, is still here and is better than what seems to be the only alternative. So in April 1947, the term Cold War was uttered for the first time to describe the geopolitical rift between the United States and the Soviet Union. Okay? And remember, before Russia was known as the USSR, it was known as the Soviet Union. And the Soviet Union was one of the greatest economies on the planet. Russia had, rather if you guys believe it or not, Russia had one of the greatest economies on the planet. But because the United States saw the Soviet Union as a threat to to creating even greater arms than what the United States had. The United States wanted to use the CIA to hire economic hitmans and Asian provocateurs and you know all kind of madness in order to um, bring down the Soviet Union. I mean, I don't want to go too much into detail. I mean, all I know is that civil war broke out in Russia. We all know how the United States do it. They'll start civil war in the country, and they'll send in the economic hitmans, and just like that, you know that they'll bring a country down financially to the point to where that country will have to be financially dependent upon America. You know, Russia was not dealing with the United States dollar until the USSR came on the scene, because the Soviet Union's economy was doing so bad that it got to a point to where Russia needed support from the United States. And in order for the United States to come to an agreement to help in Russia's economy, Russia had to get rid of the Soviet Union. And that's why we have the USSR now. So Russia, in a roundabout way, Russia did not ask for the USSR. Russia wanted to keep the Soviet Union, but because of the United States and their sanctions and doing what they do and this, that, fourth, and the other, well, now Russia has what is called a USSR. So the confrontation supposedly ended with the fall of the USSR. Okay, but did the cessation of tensions happen only in our imagination? While Washington and Moscow made invincible allies in the battle against Nazi Germany, the two ideological foes could no longer conceal their mutual enmity when World War II came to a close in 1945. Need to remind you, actually, no, yeah, wait, because World War II started in World War II, I believe, started in 1925. But no, World War II happened a bit longer than 1945. But then a severe chill swept the planet for nearly half a century that many fear would end in nuclear disaster. 75 years ago this month, Bertrand Baruch, the American financier and statesman, coined the term Cold War to describe this protracted standoff. Speaking before a delegation of U.S. lawmakers, Baruch, foreshadowing the Red Scare of the McCarthy years, told his audience, "Let us not be deceived. We are today in the midst of a Cold War." And this is something that I've mentioned for months now. We've been in the Cold War. We've been in the Cold War for what? Nearly 2 years now. Nearly 2 years, actually longer than that. More than 4 years we've been in the Cold War. And again, Cold Wars, just because you don't see airplanes shooting down other airplanes or warships shooting down, aircraft, or just because you don't see ground troops fighting against each other, does not mean that it's not a Cold War. No. Cold Wars can simply start by countries putting sanctions on other countries. It can start with cyber attacks. It can start with propaganda and demonization. It can start with sending economic hitmans to attack particular parts of a country. So we've been in the Cold War, but now we're starting to see a physical escalation of it, and that's where Ukraine comes in. Ukraine is that physical escalation of this Cold War, and that's why we see Russia attacking Ukraine. So it says, let us not be deceived. We are today in the midst of a Cold War. Our enemies are to be found abroad and at home. Let us never forget this. Our unrest is the heart of their success. Historians tend to agree that the Cold War began in 1947, which would be what two years supposedly after World War II ended, or did World War II ended in 1947? It says, with the so-called Truman Doctrine, a program of containment against America arc enemy as recommended by the U.S. diplomat George Kennan until December 26, 1991, when the Soviet Union gave up the ghost. Others argue that it actually began as early as 1945. So many claim that this Cold War began as soon as World War II began, and so-called ended, right? But that's what they're saying. When Washington dropped atomic bombs on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in the final days of World War II. The dreadful act, which took Moscow and the world by surprise, compelled Joseph Stalin to ramp up the Soviet nuclear program. On August 29, 1949, Moscow tested its first nuclear weapons, thereby achieving strategic balance with the United States. So that's pretty much all I'm going to read there. So, I just wanted to use this article to prove to you brothers that we've been in the Cold War. And what we're seeing concerning what's happening between Russia, Ukraine, the United States, and NATO, this is the physical. This is the start of the physical escalation of this Cold War. So with that, I'm gonna say shalom is on to the next one.